Let your eyes travel to verse 14. Joshua chapter 24, verse 14. Joshua chapter 24, verse 14. Now therefore, fear the Lord, and serve him in sincerity and in truth. And put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood, and in Egypt, and serve the Lord, serve ye the Lord rather. Verse 15, and if it seems evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, but as for me and my house, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Amen.
Amen. I'll talk to you today from this subject, a challenge to change your mind. Thank you.
Amen.
God bless you. Precious. Every choice, every decision that we make is preceded by history and information that we should take heed to prior to making the choice. Let me translate it like this. You knew that he was no good.
Come on now.
In fact, he gave you all the indications that he, at best, he was just a baby maker. Your friends told you. In fact, one of your friends who he had a baby from told you. You received information and evidence that this guy was a lazy bum.
Come on now.
But you still, in spite of the information, you chose to go with him. You knew she was a GD, a gold digger, and a God denier. She showed you that she didn't really care about church.
Amen.
But because of your decision, you looked at the history, the information, and the evidences, but yet you decided to go with it.
Amen.
If you made a bad choice, say amen. If you made a bad choice in spite of the information, say amen. If you knew that it was not good to you or for you, but yet you decided to go with it any old way, say amen. That means most of us in the house don't mind telling somebody that even though history showed us not to do it, we decided to still go on and go forth with it.
Come on, Doc.
And so life is full of choices. We make choices every second of the day. Unfortunately, many of us make choices and we ignore the information and the history that precedes making the choice. You knew that if you get caught, it's jail time. Your partner went to jail for the very same thing. Your brother went to jail for the very same, but you decided to take a penitentiary change. You thought that you was going to get away with it. I'm trying to set this up to let us know that the choices that we make, we need to start considering the consequences before the choice.
That's good.
Let me talk to my young crowd this morning. Let me tell you something. Sex without marriage is wrong.
Amen.
And if you continue to have sex,
Come on, Doc.
there are some consequences
Yes,
that precedes them and follows after them, rather. Every choice you make, there's consequences around the corner. I'm going to try one more time, because young folks, don't let these old folk fool you by their silence. They done done some stuff that they weren't supposed to do themselves. And the shame of us today in the church today is that we've got our young folk thinking that we ain't never done that. We got to stop lying to our young people, stop being ashamed of our past, and tell our past, baby, don't do that, my daddy, because I've done it and it ain't good for you. We hurt our young people by not revealing that we made those mistakes. We won't criticize folks pregnant without a husband. And if the truth be told, most of us was born out of wedlock. When I discovered I was born out of wedlock, it blew my mind. Because I thought that my mom and daddy was together. Well, they were together, but they weren't together, you know. The choices that we make, they have consequences.
Yes, they do.
And we need to understand that the choices that the young people make, we need to tell them of the consequences before they make the choice. Young men, young black men, old black men for that matter now, when the po-po stop us, raise your hand, don't talk back, and do what they say. That's a public service announcement right there. That in this day and time, if you are black and you get stopped by the police, raise your hand and say, don't shoot. Oh, y'all need to talk to me now. Teach them to observe all things whatsoever I commanded you. And so choices that we make have consequences. And I don't want to be the dead horse, but I'm going to hit this dead horse one more time. Stop looking and acting like you ain't made a bad choice.
Amen.
I'm going to say it one more time. Because some of y'all looking at me like you don't know what I'm talking about. But all you got to do is push rewind and you'll find out just the other day you made a bad choice. Story about a man who found a snake frozen. So he picks the snake up and decides to be a good Samaritan. He chose to take the snake home. He chose to nurture the snake back to health. In fact, he got so engulfed with helping the snake, he put the snake, Sister Ladette, in the bed with him. And when the snake came to its wits, it raised up and bit him. And the man said, why did you bite me? When you was frozen solid, I took you in. I nurtured you back. I brought you back to health. But the snake looked at him and said, yeah, you knew I was a snake before you picked me up. And you know what snakes do when they're close to somebody. The choices that you make, check your information out and your history and your evidences out before you make the decision. Too many of us want to get right after a bad choice. We want to get common sense then after a bad choice. Check the information. And in this text we find Joshua is up in age. He's 110 years old. He's on his way to death. He has led Israel since Moses passed them the baton. He's brought them through battles, many wars, many victories by the hand of God. And now he's up in age and he knows his time is approaching. Would to God that those of us who are up in age would spend our time elevating the next generation. And instead of going out bitter, go out better. And Joshua could have complained about everything, but Joshua said, before I go, I'm going to do something that's going to be helpful to somebody else. He calls Israel leaders. He calls them and says, listen, I'm on my way to the other side. But before I go, I want to remind you. Now, you got to remember that who Joshua is talking to, many of them wasn't even born during the Mosaic leadership. Many of them wasn't even born when they crossed over to the other side. And so now what Joshua wants to do is to remind them of the history of their ancestors. He wants to let them know that you are not where you are because of who you are. But you are where you are because of who God is. I think somebody should have said amen like that. Because no matter where you are right now, you are there because God is in your business. And even though you may not be where you want to be, but God got better plans for you. And what you got to understand is that God is in control. So Joshua, he rehearsed the history to the young Israelites who were not there when it first started. He tells them that God took your forefather, Abraham and Terah, Abraham's father, who were pagan worshipers. Then God called them out of idolatry. You remember Genesis chapter 12, don't you? And the Lord spoke to Abraham. His name was Abram at the time. God spoke to him. God pulled him out and said, get ye from among your kinfolk. At the time God called Abram, he was a pagan God worshiper. I wish somebody helped me preach this one. But aren't you glad that even though in your paganness, God is still calling you out of darkness into his light? And so God called Abraham. And when he called him out of his idolatry, he told him that if you follow me, I'll make you a great nation. He said, I'll make your ancestors as much as the stars in the sky and the sand on the sea. He says, if you just obey my word, I'm going to take care of you. Long after your name is gone, your name will still be living on. Question I need to put on the floor. Have you entertained with what you going to leave somebody? Come on, God. You may not have a bunch of money. You may not have a bunch of property. But you got a legacy. And what you leave is important because it will help somebody either draw closer to God or draw away from God. Took Abraham, made him a great nation. He gave Abraham Isaac, and gave Isaac Jacob, and Esau. He says Esau went and stayed in Mount Seir, but Jacob went to Egypt. And it was in Egypt where the heavy hand of a mean Pharaoh fell on the children. Give me your history right here. And they cried unto the Lord. For 400 some odd years they cried. And Pharaoh made labor worse, killing them injustifiably and using them like dogs. But aren't you glad that God heard the cry? Can I tell somebody, keep on crying to God? He hears you. And when God don't give you an answer, you just keep on crying to him, because that's your way of saying to God, I know you hear me. And I believe you're going to see about me. To the single mom that's out there struggling of Egypt. And when Pharaoh raised up against him, he sent 10 plagues. You know the story. I'm trying to get you to make think about the information before you make a decision. And then got to the point where Pharaoh said, I'm going to let him go. But he decided to renege on his word. He traced them till they got to the Red Sea. And when they didn't have nowhere to go. Have you been there before? When you had nowhere to go? Sister Reed, can you testify how you've been down when every door was shut, every window was closed? You had nowhere to go, but you called on the Lord. That's why that song said, I love the Lord. He heard my cry, and he pitied every one. Long as I live, when trouble rises, I'll make haste. That's strong. So when they got to the Red Sea, with nowhere to go, the Lord delivered them. Joshua says to them, and even after he delivered them and destroyed their enemies, he crossed them over through a land of promise. But before they got to the land, they had to deal with a desert and a wilderness. You missing this? This is good stuff right here. And while they were in the desert and the wilderness, God kept them. A pillar of cloud by day to keep the sun off of them. A pillar of fire by night to keep them warm. He fed them manna from heaven. He gave them sweet water. And he made sweet water out of sour water. Not only that, but if you check the text out, they had the same clothes, same shoes. Didn't have to cheat. Didn't have to go to the cleaners. Didn't have to worry about a washing material. God took care of them. Told them, if you follow me, if you walk with me, if you let me lead you, you will find the land flowing with milk and honey. I was trying to have a church in here. And the Bible said that when they got to the promised land, there were some who did not believe. Can I tell you something? Everybody in here don't believe. You better check yourself and don't look at nobody else. The question is not do they believe, but do you? So, got them to the land. He sent some spies out. You know the story. 10 came back saying we can't. And 2 came back saying yes we can. And we can not because of who we are, but we can because of who he is. I need Bethany to get to the point to stop saying what we can't do and say what we can do. Because who we belong to. It says, when they got to the land, and they said we couldn't do it. The Lord said, you're right, you ain't gonna do it. And all of those who didn't believe, he marched them until the last one died. Only Joshua and Caleb. And those who were below the age of 21 entered into the land of promise. And it was then before he entered into the land of promise, he told Moses, because you didn't do what I say do, then you won't enter into the land of promise. So you might as well pass the baton to Joshua. Come here, somebody. This is for free here. If you don't do it, God got somebody else that will do it. Do me a favor, look at somebody next to you and say, you know, God got somebody else that will do it. You're going to be in that land.
Amen.
And they're going to be on your heel. But be faithful as Moses. Can I tell you something? A faithful man is not a perfect man.
Amen.
Because the devil wants you to think that your failures are final. But can I tell you something? A just man can fall down 7 times. And God will pick him up 7 times. You got to understand, being faithful means that your trust level gets better every day.
Yes.
While you're in the land, don't hook up with it. Y'all say it like that, y'all. Don't hook up with it. Because they don't mean you no good. You remember mama say, boy, your people don't mean you no good. She saw something that you didn't see. Young people, you better hear this one right here. When your parents say don't do it, they see something that you don't see. But they've been there, done that, and got the t-shirt, blouse, or whatever you wear. They have it. And so God says to them, through Joshua, if you serve me, even in the land of strange gods, I will keep you. Now, I said all that to say this, that Joshua knew that these people who he's talking to was kinfolk to the ones who God had to punish. Can I tell you something? Joshua said like this, I know you wasn't there, but the apple don't fall far from the tree. Some of y'all, even though you see how good God has been, you still have the propensity to drift somewhere else. You look close, I know this should get a little hot right here.
Amen.
What Joshua was saying is that you are delivered, but you're not devoted. You are saved, but you're not serious. You are free, but you're fickle. And what Joshua was saying to them, he said the same thing to you and I today. Before you make a choice, check your information out. Can I ask somebody, has God been good? Has God been good? If he's been good, he's woke you up every morning. He started you on your way. He's been your friend. When people turn their backs on you, he put bread on your table. He put shoes on your feet. He gave you a place to stay. And when the bank said no, God said, I got somebody else. And here you are in a land flowing with milk and honey. In a land flowing with other gods. And here you are about to go somewhere that you ought not go. What sense do it make to go backpunking to something where used to hurt you? What sense do it make to go back to that mess used to mess you up? What sense do it make to keep on going backwards? God said, I got something better for you. So, Joshua says in verse 14, now, since I've given you the history, now, since I've given you the evidence,